People talk about money like it's simple. They say, invest in gold, buy real estate, get some Bitcoin. But billionaires don't see assets the way you do. They don't see price, they see power structures, because every asset, gold, Bitcoin, real estate, represents a different form of control, liquidity, and influence in the global hierarchy. And once you understand how they see these things, you stop chasing profits and start acquiring leverage. Let's start with gold, the oldest symbol of wealth in human history. To most people, it's a shiny metal. To billionaires, it's time insurance. Gold is the only asset that exists outside human promises. It doesn't depend on governments, banks, or electricity. It's pure, universal, and immune to opinion. That's why it's not a growth asset, it's a control asset. When billionaires buy gold, they're not betting on price. They're buying silence, protection from chaos, protection from the system they helped create. Gold represents control without permission. It doesn't care who's in office, which currency collapses, or what technology dies. It just sits, unchanging, incorruptible, waiting for history to repeat itself. That's why central banks hoard it even as they print trillions of paper dollars. They know gold is the final language of power, the one that speaks when every other currency fails. For billionaires, gold isn't about wealth, it's about sovereignty. Now let's move to Bitcoin, the rebellious child of gold, born from distrust in the system. Where gold is ancient power, Bitcoin is digital rebellion. It's liquid, borderless, programmable. It gives you the illusion of independence, a new kind of freedom that doesn't require vaults or governments. But here's what billionaires see that most people don't. Bitcoin is freedom with conditions. It's decentralized in code, but centralized in infrastructure. Electricity, internet, regulation, exchanges, all bottlenecks that can be controlled. So while the poor see Bitcoin as escape, the rich see it as the next territory to be conquered. That's why institutions are flooding into crypto. They don't hate Bitcoin, they're taming it, they're building ETFs, custody solutions, and mining monopolies. Because control always follows innovation. To billionaires, Bitcoin isn't a revolution. It's an integration, a new rail for old money. They'll never fight it. They'll own the roads it runs on. If this already shifts your perspective, pause for a moment and follow rich logic right now. Because here, we don't talk about markets, we talk about mechanisms. And when you understand the mechanisms, you start playing the same game the rich do. Now, let's talk about real estate, the most misunderstood asset of them all. To the middle class, real estate means safety. To billionaires, it means territory. Land isn't about ROI, it's about permanence. It's a power anchor. When you own real estate, you own part of the map. And maps are what governments are built on. Gold can be hidden, Bitcoin can be deleted, but real estate can shape laws, influence zoning, and control cities. That's why the biggest fortunes in history, from monarchs to moguls, were built on land. Land doesn't move, so if you control it, people move around you. Real estate is the foundation of visible power. It grants influence that spreadsheets can't measure. Billionaires don't care if the house goes up 5%. They care that it gives them access to credit, to leverage, to policy. They know land is the most negotiable collateral in existence. It's the only asset that produces rent, tax shields, and political respect. That's why they hold it through corporations, trusts, and shell entities, not to hide, to multiply control invisibly. Now here's the truth that shocks most people. Billionaires don't pick one asset. They use all three, but for different reasons. Gold to preserve power, Bitcoin to test new power, real estate to display power. Each one serves a unique function in the architecture of wealth. Gold is control, Bitcoin is liquidity, real estate is influence. Let's break that down. When billionaires hold gold, they're hedging against human error, the arrogance of governments, the fragility of fiat. When they hold Bitcoin, they're hedging against time, positioning for a world that moves at digital speed. When they hold real estate, they're hedging against relevance, anchoring themselves in a tangible world that still runs on borders and buildings. It's not diversification, it's dimensional power management. They're not protecting money, they're protecting options. Most people chase liquidity, the rich chase leverage, because liquidity gives you flexibility, but leverage gives you control. Gold is illiquid, and that's its purpose. It forces patience. Bitcoin is ultra-liquid, and that's its danger. It invites emotion. Real estate is semi-liquid, slow, but stable. It rewards vision, not reaction. That's why billionaires balance all three: one asset for survival, one for velocity, one for empire. If you're beginning to see money differently, take a second and like this video, because this is how you train your mind to see like the elite. Let's go further. Beyond finance, each asset also reveals a different psychology of control. Gold represents defensive control, Bitcoin represents experimental control, real estate represents territorial control. The poor think control comes from ownership. The rich know it comes from influence. Gold influences trust. Bitcoin influences systems. Real estate influences people. And when you combine all three, you don't just protect wealth, you govern it. Here's something no one talks about. For billionaires, assets aren't passive, they're political. Owning gold aligns them with stability. Owning Bitcoin aligns them with innovation. Owning real estate aligns them with the state. That's why they never truly rebel against the system. They're diversified across worldviews. When the world moves left, they have assets on the right. When the world digitizes, they already own the infrastructure. When the old order collapses, they have gold as the reset button. That's not luck, that's meta strategy. Now let's talk about control in practice. Gold gives control over value. It resists inflation and chaos. Bitcoin gives control over mobility. It moves wealth across borders instantly. Real estate gives control over civilization, because everything physical must exist somewhere. That's why billionaires see real estate not as an investment, but as territorial leverage. If you can shape a city's skyline, you don't just make money, you make rules. And when you can move money instantly between digital and physical domains, you don't just play the system, you transcend it. That's the future of power: hybrid control. Gold for permanence, Bitcoin for speed, real estate for presence. Now think about how the average person uses these same assets. They buy a little gold for fear. They buy Bitcoin for greed. They buy real estate for comfort. Three emotions: fear, greed, comfort. Billionaires use the same assets for strategy: protection, experimentation, dominance. Same tools, different consciousness. That's the real separation between classes, not access, but awareness. If this message is connecting with you, pause and subscribe to Rich Logic now. Because this channel doesn't teach you how to make money. It teaches you how to think like money. Let's end with the hidden truth that ties it all together. Gold, Bitcoin, and real estate aren't competitors. They're coordinates, a three-point map of how power moves through civilization. Gold is past power, the foundation of trust. Real estate is present power, the structure of control. Bitcoin is future power, the speed of transformation. And the billionaires who understand this map aren't predicting the future. They're owning all timelines. They hold the old, master the new, and rent out the middle. So next time you see a billionaire quietly buying farmland, funding crypto infrastructure, and storing gold in Swiss vaults, remember this: they're not diversifying wealth, they're diversifying dominance. They know civilizations rise and fall in cycles, but value never disappears. It simply moves to whoever controls the transition. If this opened your eyes like this video, subscribe to Rich Logic and share it with someone still playing the small game. Because the rich don't see gold, Bitcoin, and real estate as investments. They see them as instruments of evolution. Gold protects the past, Bitcoin writes the future, real estate controls the present, and whoever masters that triangle doesn't just survive history, they own it.